Welcome to an afternoon Garden Report. Getting back going with some daily editions here. I want to squeeze one in between the game one and game two of this Celtics Raptors mini series. Noor, Zainab is here with me. Welcome in, Noor, and good to finally talk to you about some Raptors here. And I'm going to quiz you on what
Oh,
happened. What happened with this team this year? This is a team that I love. Our chat knows well that I've loved the Raptors going back to that 2020 series between these two teams. Love their
mhm.
style. Love that they're a little bit different in how they play, and I think you know what I mean. But this year's just been hectic with them and disappointing. And they're gonna be in this play-in tournament and maybe sneak into the playoffs here, but this isn't what everyone pictured up there, I'd imagine, when they pushed Philly 6 games last year.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the scientists to let us know what went wrong this season. We have no idea because if you look at the roster, it's the same exact people from last year to this year. If anything, you have having the addition of Jakob Poeltl at the trade deadline made you a better team because you had been missing that center, typical position for the past 2 years. And there's a lot of different things that you can chalk it up to. You can say it's the lack of offense. There's a lot of guys that don't make their shots. You can say that this is a team that has founded itself on defense, and they've been lacking in that regard for pretty much most of the season, just except the beginning of 2022. And you're at the point now where you also got to wonder what's happening in the locker room because a lot of these guys were up for contract this season, and there is so many rumors going around. You have Fred VanVleet, who has to get signed this offseason, as well as Gary Trent Jr., and then the front office brought on Jakob Poeltl, who also has to get signed this offseason. So it's like, who are we signing? How are we retaining them? And if those three guys can walk off, why did we keep them on for at the trade deadline? So there's we're looking pretty different from last year to this year, just in terms of standings. And the worst part is that the team stayed the same. So I'm assuming this is a lot of locker room, front office, coaching stuff that's not meshing together right now.
Yeah, which is shocking because this is a group that's usually pretty in tune with what their coach wants, and they play an aggressive style of defense. He's been pretty good at scheming up, stopping other teams, and that's what really shocks me is we knew, looking back to the loss of Kyle Lowry a couple years ago and some other guys that have gone out the door, that this team would struggle to score sometimes, and they certainly have. I mean, that game on Wednesday was ugly. I mean, 11% for a lot of the game when I was looking up from three. It almost looks at times like they're just tossing the ball up and trying to go get it again for putbacks. So I expected that. But defensively, this is the biggest reason I always respected this team is that they were going to throw a bunch of bodies at opponents. They have all these long guys. Joe Mazzulla was joking before last game that they just measure everybody's wingspan, and that's how they draft them. But
It's
it
true.
hasn't clicked on that end either. And it's got to be coaching. It's got to be the internal stuff you talk about. And then, of course, Nick Nurse makes those weird comments about a week ago or so that he's going to have to rethink his future after this year, which may not be his choice. I don't know if he's setting up something there with how this year is gone. But this is a champion. This is a guy who's well respected, who's been in Coach of the Year talks in the past. And I guess sometimes coaches just sour a little bit.
I would assume so. I think he's also expressed his distaste with the roster construction this season as well. There's been a couple times where, and during press conferences, post or pre-game, where he's been asked about the status of the team and what we can expect in the playoffs, and he's pretty much blatantly out loud said that. Well, we don't have a guy to match someone like Embiid. We don't have a guy to match someone like Giannis, and that's him, I guess, publicly letting the front office know that we need more depth. And if you look at this team, that's kind of what it is. Nick Nurse has been known for someone who rides his starters into the ground next to Thibodeau, but the reason for that is we don't really have much of a bench. If you look at our bench, you have now Gary Trent Jr. coming on because we brought on Poeltl, which gave you a little bit of depth coming off as sixth man. But beyond that, there's a bunch of guys that you can't really rely on. So I don't really blame Nick Nurse a lot for what he's putting himself through, what he has to go through. But I do got to say, those comments at that time, especially right before you're about to play Philadelphia,
It
it's
was
not a
shocking.
good. Yeah, it's not good morale for your team, especially, as you said, you guys are good. You've clinched your spots, you're in the playoffs, you're good to go, but we're trying to still make that playoff push through the play-in, and every single game counts at this moment. So hearing him say that before a very important game, it could have been one of our playoff matches sometime this season, was disheartening, really, because that's not where the mindset should be right now.
Yeah. Were you surprised by what they did at the deadline? I like the Pirtle move. He's a guy who had been there in the past, and he's talked obviously this year about enjoying that he went back to Toronto and being able to step right back in, maybe a little more comfortably than coming to a place like Boston where he had never been before and where there would be free agency coming up. He gets to start there, which is big, I think, and he did give them a little boost when he first arrived. They won a couple of good games there after he entered the lineup, and you talked about how much they needed size. But it wore off. I think they went to like 6-6 after his arrival through the first 12. Another loss now against Boston in this last one. And like you said, they talked about OG. Fred could have been a guy who moved. Siakam, even though that seemed more unlikely. Everyone on this roster, it felt like, entered trade rumors at one point. So when all they did was add Pirtle, I think that shocked everybody. And I've seen Raptors fans be like, why didn't we sell? I mean, what'd we do this for? Why did we run all this back just to end up in the play-in tournament?
Well, we were at a very good spot to go and enter the lottery, and it was just like, are we really going to put ourselves through the play-in and try to win either 2 games or 1 game and then get home court and figure out who we play in the playoffs? Was gonna be either Milwaukee or Boston, and I've seen how we fare against these teams despite you guys being undermanned, so it was not going to be a ball in the park for Raptor fans, and, as you said, every single player was pretty much up for grabs. Like, the entire league was salivating over the Raptors core, and we thought for sure you were about to lose at least two, and maybe OG and Gary Trent and Fred VanVleet. But the two that we really focused on were Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent because, as I said, they had their contract coming up at the end of the season. So it was a shock when we became buyers and not actually sellers. And this was a moment for Masai to kind of just create a new team, give himself a blank slate, and figure out who he wants to draft, what he wants the team to look like. But instead, we became buyers. But I will say that deadline went and passed, everything came to surface, and it sounded like the deals that were in place for Masai to bank on were not what he wanted. And after I heard what they were too, like the Clippers refused to add Terrence Mann to their deal for Fred VanVleet. There was a bunch of offers for OG, but when it came to picks, they were always dwindling. So it was a slap in the face for what we thought our players were worth. And I think that's what got Masai to say, you know what, I'm going to bank on what we have right now. Let me give them a center. We needed two things. We needed a center and a point guard. So he got us a center, and he said, let's see how we can take this team and go over the rest of the season during the play-in, during the playoffs. And it's sad to say that it really hasn't, turned out the way that Masai or Bobby had wanted it to.
Yeah, and that guard spot looks rough some nights. Scotty, you understand a sophomore slump from him. Fred's the shocking one. I was watching him on Wednesday and hit the backboard a couple times, not shooting his usual percentage from three, and he's usually a guy who just shoots volume there, and that's his game. He just drills a bunch of threes. Free agency coming up. That's the guy you probably look back on and say, all right, did we make the right decision here? Because he could leave for nothing, maybe a sign and trade. Usually don't get a ton back for that. But on top of it all, he doesn't look like a guy he was even last year. And I struggle to understand why. There's a lot that baffles me about this Raptors team this year, but his season and even that game on Wednesday, he said after I blew the game. I think he went 2 for 14 or whatever. He put it on
Mhm.
him, got a bunch of open looks, missed them. I don't know what's gone on there this year because they need offense, guys generating offense, as you said, from that guard spot. And he's really struggled to do that all year.
Yeah, he's the thing with Freddie is as great of a player as he is in more ways than one, just apart from shooting, his shooting is pretty inconsistent. So it comes and goes. He was going through an injury. He had family troubles right after the trade deadline. So he was out for a little bit. But since then, he's been getting his group back together. So he's had a couple of good games since February. But as you said, the last game, I don't want to give him excuses, but I did see, his arm was hurting, his hand was hurting. He got it taped up and he went back in the game and he was really shouldering the other hand at that point for the rest of the game. But I I do wonder what route Masai will take because, as he said, Freddie is up for grabs this offseason. So is Jakob Pertl. So is Gary Trent Jr. So what direction will this team go in? And as you said, we've been missing a center. We've been missing a point guard. The shooting has just been our kryptonite, not just this season, but ever since this Vision 6-9 came to fruition through Masai Ujiri. And it really prioritized defense and length on the other end of the court. But the problem is, if you don't, you can defend the other guys for sure, but at some point you have to get the ball in the bucket, and we just don't have those guys that can do that consistently, and that's kind of where we're lacking, and that's why I think to take on the greats in the East, like the Celtics, the Bucks, Philly, I'm not sure we have what it takes to be packing right now, not just on the court, but even coaching wise, because I'm not seeing even any plays being drawn up offensively. There's nothing being done to put the guys in their respective space that will give them spacing, that will give them opportunities, that will give them open looks. It's just pretty much give the ball to a guy and let's hope to God he can either shoot it or give it a good pass out and someone else who catches the ball can get the ball in because no play is being drawn. And I think the last time I actually saw the Raptors drop a play was when Kyle Lowry was on the team.
Yeah, I
Not
saw a
even
ton of
kidding.
ISO in that game. They try to sneak some, like, backdoor cuts a few times, and then the Celtics figured that out pretty quickly. Yeah, it's pretty flat with what you're looking at there offensively. Siakam tried to save them with all those fadeaways late in the game, but once his run stopped, the Celtics were able to pull ahead by two late there, hit their free throws, and then come out of it. What's the end of the season? I'll ask you about their future, but what do you think the end of this season is going to look like here? It's Celtics tonight, Bucks on Sunday. Tiny chance that they sneak into that upper playing game, but it looks like it's going to be Raptors Bulls at this point. And then you got to win a second game to get into that 8 seed against Milwaukee, which is pretty daunting.
Mhm.
What do you think the next week and a half looks like for them?
Yeah, well, tonight I'm gonna ask you guys to take it easy. If you guys want to take the whole day off and let your third stringers take over the game, please do. We need this one as
There's
badly as
nothing
we
I'd love more for Celtics Raptor than Celtics Raptors. I don't think it's happening.
I know, I know. Actually, you know what? In Toronto, I'm a disgrace because I'm actually a big Celtics fan too. I love what you guys have going on there, not just in your core, but your bench. Having the luxury of having Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon come on, he actually did pass us up to go over to you guys, and
That's
I don't
right.
blame him for that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't blame him for that. He's doing great things there, especially last game kind of took it over. But yeah, I think in terms of tonight, it's every single game since the trade deadline, even prior to that, has been must win. So the Raptors are going to go into this one knowing that they have to come out with a win, knowing that they want to make another push to make sure that they either get home court or if they can push, kind of figure out with the Hawks. But the problem is they've had a couple opportunities the past couple of games to be able to go out and take that 8th seed from the Hawks. But every time the Hawks lost, so did the Raptors. Anytime the Hawks won, so did the Raptors. So it just never worked out that way together. I'm just going to assume now, given the fact that the Bucks and the Celtics have clinched their spot in the playoffs, that they are going to look to rest players for the next couple of games. And but then again, I don't know how much to trust this Raptors team because you guys had, Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart and Al Horford sitting last game, even Payne Pritchard, and the Raptors still couldn't come through just in terms of getting those shots up. So it's going to come down to if they can have the offense against you guys tonight and then the Bucks later on. And then playing, I,
That's got to be an
my
ugly
best.
game.
That's the thing, right? You were just like, why do we want to put ourselves through the plane? We could even, enter the stakes for Wemby or get the second best out of that draft. But I like the matchup of Chicago. I think Chicago's the one team that the Raptors match up well against. It's kind of the same thing where there's not really a traditional point guard. It's just a lot of ISO ball. And at that point, I trust the Raptors defense to come through. But in terms of anything beyond that, whether that be the Hawks or the Heat, I don't trust the Raptors because I think Jimmy Butler would be the best player on the court. And then you got Trae Young and DeJounte Murray going crazy offensively. And I don't think the Raptors can match that level of production.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And as for tonight, really quick, FanDuel, of course, our official sponsor here at the Garden Report. They have the Celtics -1 tonight. I
Ooh.
guess expecting a bunch of guys to be out on their side. White, Brogdon, Smart, and Pritchard all possibly missing this game. Raptors fully healthy again, but that didn't do them very well on Wednesday. That was another close line on Wednesday, too, and I did really like the Celtics because, like you said, they've played great under man, great bench, great depth, and that's gotten them through. So I really like that line again for Boston tonight, -1. And you can head over to fanduel.com/Boston to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just need a $10 deposit. You can bet on all your favorite sports. I know Masters is going on, a bunch of stuff, NHL playoffs, baseball. Bet now, an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use. Don't miss your chance to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, when you go to fanduel.com/Boston to make every moment more on America's #1 sportsbook. 21 plus, present in mass, first online real money wager only, $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable. Bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.com. Sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem, hope is here. Gambling helpline ma.org or 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. That's fanduel.com/Boston. So where do you think the Raptors should go after this year, Noor? You talked about the 6-9 plan. I don't think it's worked out. No center last year, killed them when Embiid came around. It was almost the worst first round matchup possible. You think they could have maybe won any first round series except that. Um, is this just blow it up time after this? I love Scotty. He's probably part of their future. OG could still maybe get a lot for him after this year. Pascal, who knows? How big of a change do you think we could see after this year? Is it as simple as just trying a coaching change now?
You know what? I do think we need. I think Nick Nurse is a great coach, and we need that defensively. But I do. After losing, we lost Sergio Scarlilo, and we also lost Finch right afterwards too, and Chris Finch, and that's what kind of led us down this path of not being able to produce offensively because they were our offensive coaches, and Nick Nurse was there to be the defensive mind. So not having that level of like vision just off court has been really bothering us. And I wonder if the Raptors will look to kind of make that addition this offseason. But in terms of what we have right now, I think this team has always been way closer to contending than they have been to tanking. The pieces that we have are great pieces. Are they going to be #1 pieces? Probably not, but they are great pieces for a good team. And what we're missing is giving them the right resources and tools for them to succeed. They did that by bringing up a Pirtle in because when we didn't have him, you had to have 5 guys. So every one of your starters have to go and pretty much pound on Embiid and Giannis the whole way through. But now having Pirtle there, even though he's a little bit lankier on that side to be able to take on the best of the best and Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid, it does help having that just that help defense there. But I think more so than that, we also need a traditional point guard that passes first. I love Fred VanVleet. I think he's great when it comes to being versatile. If he can't do offense, he will pass. He will defend. He's one of the best defenders in the league when it comes to his own position in point guard. But the problem with him is he looks to shoot first. And I think what we need here, especially when the coaching isn't drawing up a lot for you to be executing on the court, is you need to have a point guard on your team that thinks about passing first, that thinks about putting the guys in the best position to get them open looks. And we just don't have that. I see a lot of holding the ball until the 24-second, passing it out to the corner. Guy gets a contested shot, obviously doesn't go in. And I want to see more of spacing. And we don't have that with the guys that we have on the roster right now. Because as great as Fred VanVleet is, I think he's very well suited to be a shooting guard. I love his position there. And that's what he was when he was 2019 with Kyle Lowry on the team, where Kyle would have the ball. They're running around on the court. Kyle finds Freddie as he's open on the perimeter, and then bang, he gets the ball in. So I think this team is still closer to contending than they are to tanking, but I need to see them give them the resources to succeed.
As for the Celtics, you said you love them. You're a big fan of what they have going on right now, and most of my guests are. I mean, we're watching them every game and nitpicking them and this and that, and they've had a few rougher stretches in the second half. But overall, a 2 seed, can't knock that. I wish they were the one because they had a really good lead on that for a while there, but two's fine. It's a tricky first round series. I was getting a little nervous about Toronto. The chat's been on me about it because they just don't respect them at all. I've seen these two teams play. This is 3 games now that they've played within 6 points. 2020 still sticks in my head. Like, there's just so many moments where these teams have played grueling games. And even Jalen's talked about just how hard it is to play against them. They blocked them 5 times in that game on Wednesday. So there was still a little bit about this series that would have made me nervous. Probably not going to happen now. The Heat can do some similar things, and they're definitely looking like the favorite to play Boston round 1. And then it's Philly, Milwaukee. So it's looking like a tough path for this group. That makes me a little nervous. The defense is still really good. Maybe not as dominant as last year, but still pretty good. So I don't think I should worry about that as much. And the spacing you just talked about, they have as good spacing as any team in the league. So that offense has really opened up this year. But the stakes are high, and they got to stay locked in. They can't have some of these slip-ups they've had late in the season in the playoffs, and they did have those last year at times. So I just get a little nervous with this group sometimes, even though the results have been amazing. I think Joe's been awesome this year as a coach.
Mhm.
And that's a good win on Wednesday with a bunch of players missing. So they can obviously sustain some losses too if they end up getting an injury or two in the playoffs here. But how are you looking at this team and the bigger picture of contenders in the league right now?
Honestly, I actually had the Celtics coming out in the beginning of this season, and I was bamboozled. I was harassed by Toronto fans. We were supposed to be the big rivals, so they were like, "How dare you go pick the Celtics?" But I really like what you guys have going on there. And when I say traditional point guard that passes first, my mind immediately goes to Marcus Smart. I think having a guy like that that puts his body on the line, that thinks about other players first, that thinks about making a winning impact. He's not there to get the shot up. He's there to make a winning impact on both ends of the court. And that's the kind of effort you need from your players. And I see that level of effort not just on the starting five, but the bench as well, as I said. And you've got 2 guys on your bench right now, and Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon, who could be starters on other teams. And they
Brogdon
were
would be
like,
starting for Toronto. There's no doubt about it.
dude, he would be like, we would be hanging rafters of him right now. So having that level of luxury is massive. And I loved Derek White when he was with the Spurs as well. He was starting for them and he was putting up all these great points, just being a young guy and being around Pop and shaping after him. And again, like I said, having those guys off the bench for you guys, having that level of depth, besides having a conductor in Marcus Smart, a shooter in Jason Tatum, a second fiddle in Jalen Brown, and then Robert Williams being such a great paint presence. And, we can't forget Al Horford being the veteran presence that he is. It's been I love what this team looks like, and I think for me, it's gonna come down to the Bucks and Celtics at the end. I don't believe in Philly. I'm not gonna knock that wood just now. I don't think Harden's going to be a problem in the playoffs. And then you got to look at the coaching. Doc Rivers is the biggest, choke job of all time. So I don't trust that whatsoever. I also don't know if Embiid can really maintain that level of effort with his body throughout. Let's say if the game goes to 7. So I think it's going to come down to Bucks and Celtics. But in that moment, I do worry about the Celtics just because Giannis will be the best player on the court. And how do you stop a guy like Giannis if he's just bulldozing through? And they've been pretty good this season as well. That Bucks team is really clicking.
Yeah, and they did beat them by 41 last week, which was a big statement.
Yeah, that's true.
And all 3 games this year, there's another game similar to Wednesday where the Celtics went in there with Tatum sitting down, and I think Brown might have played, but it was a bunch of people sitting, and they went down the final possession with them in Milwaukee. So I love how they match up with a lot of these teams that look like they're going to stack up in front of them. Miami gets a little tricky. Jimmy Butler's been rolling late this year. I think they make Celtics fans nervous the way the Raptors make me nervous generally. So that's going to be an interesting first round series if it comes to it, especially after these finals last year. How about the West? I know you talked about a little bit this morning on your show, the Lakers and all that. Who do you see coming out of there if the Celtics do end up coming out of the East as you thought they might?
The West is a dogfight. I think almost feel like you just have to kind of throw a dart and be like, let's see where it lands in the Western Conference. There's a bunch of teams that can make the hump. I do want to side with the Nuggets just because they've been playing great basketball this whole season and having that experience of that camaraderie throughout the first 8 months. I think bodes well for your postseason run, especially having a guy like Nikola Jokic who was in MVP standings. I feel like Embiid's gonna get it, but it could still be Nikola Jokic as well. Jamal Murray's back and he's playing amazing. So, and they have the pieces around them too that can make them better. I do like the Clippers as well. They actually were my pick at the beginning of the season. I just loved what I love Kawhi. I know, I had him on my team. I know what he can do. He has a different level of intensity in the playoffs too, just like LeBron does. And we've seen it. We actually just saw it the other night when they were playing, when it was the LA Showdown. Even without Paul George, he is a menace to be around. And the Clippers team is also very good. Look at what they did last season without Kawhi and Paul George
They
there
beat
with
the
Terrence
Celtics
Mann.
bad in LA earlier this year too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're scary. They've got the defensive factor there. The only problem would be is their consistent shooting. But if you've got Kawhi Leonard on the court and he knows it's the playoffs, whoever he's facing is going to have a problem. And so that's honestly like as much as I want to say Warriors, I want to say Suns, I want to say all these teams, I do wonder how Clippers and Lakers will come through because giving Lakers, I don't want to say they're going to come out in the West, but giving LeBron that taste of a play-in or playoff, we know all he needs is just a team around him and just the playoffs right in front of him to be like set in that mindset of knowing, okay, this is my time to shine now. It could just be his last year to his last actual chance to go and win a ring with the Clippers, sorry, with the Lakers, and probably this time not in the bubble. So I can see that being a massive, motivation factor for the Lakers and adding D'Angelo Russell, having Malik Beasley there, Jared Vanderbilt having a fantastic season with them. That's a team I don't want to face. I don't think I want to face the Lakers in the Western Conference.
It sits in the back of my head. I don't want to put it out there because
Right?
I don't want to sound crazy. I don't think anyone wants to
I
commit to the
know.
Lakers aside from Lakers fans who are just going to dream constantly. So Celtics Lakers finals would be a
I don't
dream.
know.
It almost
That
happened
would
in
be
the
amazing.
it
Yeah.
almost happened in the bubble. Celtics fell apart against the Heat. So there hasn't been an opportunity since because Lakers been terrible, but they've still looked terrible at times this year. So I get nervous about hyping them up too much. Plus the path's going to be
No,
so
I get
hard.
it.
I'm going with Phoenix. I think I'm ready to jump on that bandwagon. KD, they're 8-0 with him. His numbers are ridiculous when he's out there. You worry about injuries, sure, but if everything's healthy, everything stacks up right, I think you're going to see Phoenix Boston finals, which is interesting because of that KD rumor from the summer. Brown versus him would be interesting. And then uh, the Suns just look great to me. They have all the pieces they need. They beat the Celtics pretty badly in Boston last time with guys
Mhm.
missing. So that's what I'm looking at now. That's probably what I'm going to hang my hat on, barring injuries. And even though I get a little nervous about the Celtics, I still do like the way they match up with some of these teams across the board in the East that they're going to be going against here. But it's got to stay consistent. I mean, there's just been too many slip ups, and it kills me that they're not the 1 seed. They should have been.
Honestly, it's all good because even if you look at the way that you guys had your losses, that one against Philly just recently where Embiid went off, you were undermanned anyway. So, and even, the fact that you were undermanned, you only lost by what, 2 or 3 points or something. So
Yeah.
I think for me, the Celtics team healthy is going to be a problem for anyone because not only do you guys have a lot of different players that can make their own offense, but you're one of the best defensive teams in the league too. So not only can you limit the other team in their production, but you can create your own production on the other end of the court, and that's always going to be dangerous. That's why I'm like I'm between you and Bucks coming out of the East. I just can't deny Giannis either. But I think that you guys could give them. It would be a really good Eastern Conference final between the Bucks and Celtics for sure. And the Suns, as you said, my only thing holding me back from the Suns is just knowing that, as you said, it's KD injury factor. How will they be looking into the playoffs when a team can game plan for you for a 7 game series versus teams that have been together the whole season and meshing with their just camaraderie. So I wonder about that, but as you said, it's Kevin Durant. So You give him a playoff run too, give him Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, a little bit of a bench depth, looking kind of scary. And Monty Williams too. He's a pretty great coach.
It is looking scary, and I did want to run in Boston last summer. I don't know if I was right or wrong about that, but I just took that position, and he's still looking pretty good, even with some questions about his injuries and his age now at this point. And uh, he would have given them some nastiness too, which I think they needed. But Brown's looking amazing too, so it's possible I was wrong about that. She's Noor Zainab. Love her hosting, love her Twitter presence. Go follow her over there at Noor R Zainab. And I'm bummed I'm not coming to Toronto. That was a trip I was really looking forward to. I'll take Miami for obvious reasons, but Toronto's a city I love. I haven't been there in a long time. I used to go up every year after the college semester ended because Syracuse is pretty close. We drive
Oh,
up
that's
there,
sweet.
and I
Nice.
love the city, love the team, love the fans. But it just hasn't been the year they expected, and it hasn't been the finish to the year I expected. I thought this might be a first round matchup, and it's probably just not going to happen.
I think it's because you haven't come that we haven't had the inspiration to kind of go off. So make your way over next year so that
I
we
was
can
there
be a playoff team.
when they were down 2-0 to the Bucks. I pulled up and I was like, "This is over,
Oh, no
2019,"
way.
and they turned it around, which was a team I really loved. I wish Kawhi stayed, by the way, which I'm sure you guys do as well.
We
It was
think
just a
about it
great
every
group.
single night. We
Yeah.
pray about it every single morning. We hope one day he comes back. That was the most magical fairy tale run that I've ever
Because they
witnessed
lost
as
so bad
a
the year
sports fan.
before. You thought they were done, and then
Yeah.
they get Kawhi and everything changes. Speaking of what
Well,
ifs
I
that
think,
year,
yeah.
Kyrie, that big shot he hit against them, the Garden's going crazy. He wins the game. I thought it was going to work out with Kyrie when I saw that, but of course the Celtics fell apart that year, and the Raptors went on to win it all.
Yeah, that was great. But would you blame that on Kyrie, or are you giving a little bit of blame to the organization as well with the Kyrie stuff? I was always interested in that. Like, whatever happened? Like, how was the fan base reacting to? Because I think Kyrie was loved by Boston, and then
Yeah,
once everything
until he
went
left.
down, right?
Until that last
Yeah.
series, really, against the Bucks. I don't know what percentage to put on it. I think there were a lot of competing interests that year, and he actually talked about that recently in the Jalen piece with the Ringer because they got Kyrie talking about it too, and he said there's just a lot of individual stuff going on. But he was supposed to be the leader that year. I think he just sort of zoned in and out of that role and couldn't really bring guys together. There were a lot of veterans, there were a lot of young guys on that team, and I think at some point it's pretty well documented. He decided he was going to go to Brooklyn midway through that last year. And at that point, what's your commitment level? He was terrible in the playoffs. I understand why Celtics fans boo him and go after him the way they did. That probably isn't going to happen as much as it did before because he's in Dallas now and he'll probably stay in the West.
Mhm.
But it was a fun few years of drama between him and the city of Boston. He became that kind of villainous figure that you always kind of need in sports. And um, there were some good battles too. That first round last year was really fun just because of the kind of theater of him coming back. But in terms of blaming him, it's probably overstated. It's got to be like there were other guys there. There were other people that made mistakes. There was other players that fell short. But just the fact that it seemed like he checked out and was ready to
Mhm.
go to Brooklyn halfway through the year, I think that says a lot. And um, I think he kind of made his bed when he said I'm coming back and didn't. And I think that's why Jalen's kind of been careful to say we'll see what happens when the time comes in free agency in a couple of years.
Yeah, Jalen definitely has been voicing his displeasure with your guys being able to put him in trade talks constantly, and it sucks because I feel like he's such a great number two for the Celtics, and not having Tatum there some nights is massive for you guys and Jalen Brown, and someone like the Raptors. Like I feel like my fan base is salivating over Jalen Brown constantly, wanting to
Everybody
bring him on
is.
our
I think
squad. Everyone, you know,
everybody once those interviews dropped was like, all right, let's map it out. How's
like
this
yeah,
gonna
it's our
happen?
turn. Yeah.
Knicks fans are certain I've heard from them. I think he's staying, but we'll see. Anything can happen. This year's so important though, because you think you have guys forever, and then a couple of years from now he's a free agent, and who knows what happens then. So that's why I'm nervous. I'm worried. I'm always concerned about how this year's gonna go because I thought they lost a big opportunity last year when they lost to the Warriors. This team's better. I think across the board, you look at all their statistics and everything, they're in better shape to win it all. So we'll see what happens. Thanks for the time, Noor. We'll send you on your way. Celtics Raptors tonight. 7:30, we'll have post-game coverage here on CLNS Media. And Celtics All Access. Joe Sway's back at the Garden with me here tonight. And Noor, appreciate your time, and great to finally meet you and talk to you here today.
You as well. Thanks so much. I'm going to be rooting for you guys no matter how much Toronto hates me. So you got a fan in Toronto.
All right. I like the sound of that. And of course, everybody here, show some love to our other sponsor, Athletic Greens. Athletic Greens, I feel like I haven't talked about them in a minute, but still part of my daily routine. Going on for almost a year now. Crazy to think about how long we've been all on Athletic Greens here at the Garden Report. You pour it in your water every morning. It's as simple as that. You get 75 vitamins, minerals, adaptogens, probiotics, and more, of course. And they call it an insurance. It's just that you might not get these other things in your diet. You might not get these other things as cheap as you do here in different places if you're just picking them all out individually. And they're all things you need. You can go to their website, check out great reviews that they have and all the cool gear that they have as well when you sign up for a subscription. Great. Love their cup to drink it out of. Love the container to store it in. All a great green theme. And they're going to throw in vitamin D, a year's supply, immune boosting vitamin D, and 5 free travel packs when you head over there. That's athleticgreens.com/garden. Athleticgreens.com/garden. That's it. Rolling daily. Next week's the playing tournament. We'll try to get some Heat Hawks people on board here to talk about them as those games approach. And Celtics wrapping it up with 2 games left here tonight. Crazy that the regular season's over. We'll do some retrospectives next week. Look back at how they got to this point. Great start. Some slip-ups in the middle and a strong finish here. Shaping up to into it, which should be a deep playoff run here. So stay on board. We'll be live just about daily during the week and continue every covered post game as well. Whole crew should be in tonight, aside from Weekend Jimmy. And of course, thank you to Noor for joining us here today. Celtics Raptors game 2 tonight. See you over at TD Garden.